Hello there, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary folk. What's going on? I'm RezenatorZen. I'm going to be responding to some bullshit from the American Thinker. And the title of this particular pile of shit is My Life as a Racist. It gets better. Because the little blurb underneath it says, I have never thought of myself as racist. Ask any fucking racist. They don't think they're racist. They think they're right. But in recent times, when everyone and his siblings seem to be designated as racist, I begin to wonder. Oh, the author of that is Sharon Schultz. And once this loads, I'll fucking begin reading this shit. So, I've never thought of myself as racist, but in recent times, when everyone and his siblings seem to be designated as racist, I begin to wonder if I ever had tendencies to think that way. Probably. I checked the definition, and it seems that most commonly the word is used to describe people who are prejudiced or have dislike for others of a different race. I mean, yeah. I also love how, is the prejudiced or have dislike for others of a different race. Like, in my formative years, I recall no prejudice. Because you wouldn't see it as prejudice. Because you probably were raised by a bunch of racist, bigoted sacks of shit. Like most of us were. But you know what? We get better. Because I don't remember instances in which I was exposed to those who are racially different. First clue. Like most young children, I was always asking questions. Why was that man in a wheelchair? Why does she have gray hair and so many wrinkles? Why is his skin different from mine? But I don't think I considered those others as less than myself, just different. Sure. But I don't think, is awareness of difference a prejudice? No. My childish mind probably did not think of myself as better or worse than those people. And you're saying that retroactively, not, you're trying to paint yourself as not a racist, probably. I simply started to become aware that not everyone is the same in this world. And instead of, seeing, class structure and how it disproportionately affects rich people and disadvantages, poor people, and that historically poor generally has been black people because of, hundreds of years of racism in the form of slavery and Jim Crow. I graduated from high school in 1954. That is a fucking curve. You graduated in 1954. Where did you graduate from is my biggest question. So I was aware of racial difficulties pointed out in the news. Pointed out in the news. You needed it to be pointed out by the fucking news. Bitch, you lived through fucking Jim Crow, for fuck's sake. And depending on where you lived while you graduated, depends on how close you were to the fucking bigotry. Which is probably why you're not saying where you grew up. Because it would give us fucking some indication of just how close to the racism you were. Fucking. If I thought about segregation at all, I suspect I saw no reason for it. Sure. You were a teenager in the 1950s. Actually, no. You were a fucking teenager through the 1940s into the 50s. So, I have always been a voracious reader, and for some reason, I really liked fucking the Turner Diaries. She didn't say that. And for some reason, one of the novels I read in high school was about a white girl who fell in love with a black man. What is the name of the fucking book? That's kind of vague, and again, this was a book in the United States in the 1950s about miscegenation. There's probably a reason you haven't named the fucking book. I remember finding out that it was against the law back then for black and white to marry. Again, it took you into fucking high school during the 50s for you to, for that shit to kind of click. The fucking 50s was not known as a time for nuance. Fucking holy shit. I even looked it up because it struck me as odd. Characters in books often become my best friends for... often became my best friends for a time. And this couple truly distressed me because I wanted happily ever after for them. And I think they ended their relationship. For no reason. Fucking... And that's why you were distressed. Not because they, black person and a white person were, in a relationship. It's because they ended their relationship. And again, you haven't named the fucking book, so we can't even check out your fucking story as if, we can't even verify if it's fucking true. So, fucking... They could have married in other countries, but they wanted to remain in the United States, and because of their families and any children they might have, they chose to separate. I grieved for their loss. I failed to understand why there should be a law against their caring for each other and eventual marriage. Now extend that to gay people. And you have, you've taken the prejudice that you might have had during the 1950s against black and white people getting married, and probably just kind of, push that towards the gay folk. I went to a state college after high school, so you went to college in the 50s. Okay. In order to utilize a scholarship, and found there were a few black females in the dorm to which I was assigned. I think I was curious about them, but then I was curious about so much related to starting my college experience that I gave it little thought. You were curious about those black people that you haven't seen, presumably because you were raised in the fucking South. And you didn't have many black people around. While still in high school, however, I heard my dad saying his father, who lived his life on the south side of Chicago, refused to watch baseball games when the first black player joined a team. I found that extremely hard to believe. He was a grouchy old man, but was essentially kind. You find it very hard for your grandfather to be racist. Your grandfather, who was, alive, presumably, during the 1900s. The 1900s. When, the Klan was getting its shit back together. Time heals many things. I have learned that lesson many times over the years I have lived. I married, had children, and grand and great grandkids. But did you marry a black person? Or anybody who wasn't like you? I have had a wonderful life overall, despite rampant addictive illnesses in my family. In time, I realized that we grow mainly because of the challenges we fight our way through in life. Earlier this year, I was widowed after 60 years of marriage, so this year I am learning to deal with yet another kind of grieving process. It's basically the same. I'd argue it's probably the same. Then, it's like... It's probably actually less than, having your father or mother die, because, they raised you up until the point you left the fucking house. Or, up until the fucking point, oh, fuck me. Anyway. Those of us who live in this United States are so lucky. And for the most part, we take far too much for granted. I am no better. I know how important having an attitude of gratitude is, but I often need to force myself to think about all that I'm grateful for in my life. Recently, I've heard many comments related to racism and how many people feel it has grown worse in recent years. Swings and roundabouts, just goes away, comes back. Or it goes away for white people, then comes back, for white people at a certain time. I'm here to tell you this is simply not true. Says the girl who got raised during the 30s, 40s, and 50s and graduated high school in the 50s and then went to college in the 50s, who probably is a fucking baby boomer. Actually, no. Graduating no, you wouldn't have been a baby boomer. You would have just been before a baby boomer. You probably were like a pre-war baby. And again, I assume this fucking bitch is a white lady. It's simply not, Donald Trump, demonizing fucking those damn Mexicans is not fucking racism. And fucking, Hispanic people, Muslims, and fucking Arabs, and fucking... It's not racism. It's not racism. Oh, fuck me. When you have lived as long as I have, sadly too long, you can look back and see how it was, what happened, and what it is like now. Today, black and white people marry. And that's the fucking barometer. Black and white people married in the 60s too. It's actually, a famous case in the 1960s that overturned anti-miscegenation laws. Loving v. Virginia. You should probably have heard about it at the fucking time, considering it got passed in 1964, I do believe. And you would have been in your 20s at that point? Maybe you actually would have been 28 when that... So, you might have heard about it. Our recent president was black. The first black president in, the history of this fucking country. And the current president didn't think the past president was an American citizen because he was black. He is both black and white. He's biracial. Tons of people are biracial. Racial mixtures are fairly common today. That doesn't mean racism doesn't exist, you dumb fucking saltine bitch. Tons of people racial mixtures are fairly common today. I used to fantasize that all racial problems would someday disappear because we would be so mixed, such mongrels, if you will, that we'd all be a blend. That doesn't stop bigotry, you dumb fuck. Colorism is a fucking thing. Just plain old, white supremacy is fucking still a thing. I never understood why any amount of black blood would seemingly make an individual black. Racism. Bigotry. My guess is that came out of fear, because somehow being white was mistakenly accepted as better than being black. Mistakenly accepted. Since the beginning of the fucking country, you know. I'll admit that for many years, financial success seemed far easier if one had white skin. Seemed. Not that it was, it just seemed that way. But that is truly not the case today, in my opinion, which is worth shit. With black and white intermarriages, I gather that offspring from those marriages can have variations in color. Because this wonderful thing called the genetics. This should be a good thing, but perhaps there might still be fears that a white woman could have a black child. Yes, you know, by people who the president fucking hand waves away. So what? I see lots of folks in my town where black children appear to be with white parents. I mean, adoptions and fucking... It would not surprise me to see the other side of the coin. Oh, fucking hell. There's actually a bit, there's a bit about that by W. Kamau Bell in his Netflix special, Private School Negro. So, anyway. Also, I'm pretty sure, didn't a black person get shot at or arrested? Or they had the cops called on them because they were with their child who was more white looking than they were. Because, you know, the parent was black. And, yeah. It would not surprise me, these days many people adopt children of other races. And in my experience, few even notice. In your experience, which again is fuck all. Your experience matters fucking not because you grew up in the 1950s. Actually, no. Again, you grew up in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. So your experience is null and fucking void. Sometimes this whole issue appalls me to the point where I want to scream. What is wrong with us that we focus on such stupid things? You know, just, you could listen to the black people who tell you, but, you know. Fucking, who could just, like, you know, enlighten you. Read a book. You know, so you want to talk about race? By Ijoma Oluwa? You know, maybe read a book by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Or Michael Eric Dyson. Or fucking literally any other black author. We are all human beings. It's a nice idea. And it's true, but it's not how racists feel. Not in the slightest. We are all human beings. We are all unique, yet we are all similar in what we look like, what we think, what our values are, what our life experiences have been. Only a white person would say that. Skin color is such a small part of who we are and what we can become. Tell that to the white nationalists. I lean conservative. I mean, you're on the American Thinker. You do more than lean conservative, bitch. Okay? The American Thinker, like, if you just lean conservative, you might want to get the fuck off of American Thinker, because American Thinker employs people like Colin Flaherty, who is quite clearly a racist and possibly a white supremacist, and Selwyn Duke, who's very much a white supremacist. So, just pointing that out. But even in my own immediate family, there are conversations we can no longer have because they quickly get out of hand. Presumably because you get really defensive. I want to love, not hate my family members. It's kind of how fucking the world works. I can guarantee you there are family members that I don't actually interact with because I hate them so much. Because they're bigoted old pieces of shit like you. Specifically, I have an uncle. Actually, no, I have a couple uncles who are, ironically, both degenerate alcoholics who are also super fucking shitty people. So they don't have to accept my thinking, but it saddens me that there are some subjects that we can no longer freely discuss. Like, we lack the open-mindedness to consider variations in thinking, opposing views. Like, are they pro Black Lives Matter and you're all lives matter? We become brainwashed and spout off memorized platitudes we have come to accept as gospel. I feel there's some projection going on there. We are unable to see that thoughts can meander in multiple directions and all generally have some valid points, except for white supremacists and people who don't actually acknowledge white privilege because they're fucking shitty human beings. My sons call me wishy-washy because I seem to be mainly able to see both sides of most questions. Some questions don't have both sides. I wouldn't call you wishy-washy. I'd call you a goddamn centrist piece of shit. If that's actually true. Most things in life blend and combine so that they are not black and white. Many shades of gray, maybe. Perhaps also, some things are very much black and white. Perhaps we would all benefit from broadening our perspectives. Right fucking back at ya, Karen. I won't live overly much longer, thank fuck. But I pray that those coming after me will have at least as good a life as I have experienced. They probably won't because you guys have fucked the planet pretty hardcore. And I bet you voted for Donald Trump despite all the racism and bigotry that he just kind of onto the fucking national stage. I mean, that's almost guaranteed again, considering you are currently on the American Thinker. So, yeah. You know. And again, I love this idea of like, I just love this shit of like, ugh. It's like, I want to read this. I want to read the second paragraph. In my formative years, I recall no prejudice. Her formative years were in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, mind you. I recall no prejudice because I don't remember instances in which I was exposed to those who were racially different. And that doesn't ring as prejudice. like most young children, I was always asking questions. Not, why all the use of the N-word? Because presumably you were exposed to it a lot. Probably. Especially considering, your granddad didn't like when black people were allowed to play baseball. God knows if he fucking lived now, he'd hate it because it's mostly not white people. And your grandfather would probably have been an All Lives Matter dude. Also, this is before the bombshell that she grew up in the 50s. Again, like the 40s to 50s. Why is his skin different from mine? That is apparently a question she asked in the 40s in America. Wow. Because, and I can't... I honestly would have liked to have heard the response she got from that question, but probably would have included a lot of slurs. And probably just a general amount of humongous bigotry. So. Anywho. Ta-ta everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful fucking day. I'm gonna go watch some more Unsolved Mysteries. Because it's a fucking awesome show. Fucked up, but